Hi everyone, I'm Chef Susie with Escafe Online. Welcome to our live session this morning. Today we're going to be making donuts, and they're just a favorite pastime. Typically everyone loves donuts, and what's nice about donuts, like a lot of other things that we make, the flavors are limitless. I'm going to be showing you a few basic donuts for a foundation which you can build on. So let's talk about the type of donuts that we're going to be making today. We're going to be making 3 types of donuts. We're going to be making the yeast raised donut and the cake donut and also the French donut. So I've got some doughs that I made earlier, and I'm just going to be showing you the process and how to make the donuts themselves and fry them, and then we'll finish the donuts too. So knowing all that, let's go ahead and get started. What we're going to be doing is we're going to start first with yeast raised donuts. So let's take a look at the dough that I made earlier. So for the yeast raised donut, we're just going to be using a basic bun dough. And you can use the bun dough for your assignment. That's what I'm using here today. And with these bun doughs that are just simple doughs or enriched doughs that you're going to be using for your donuts, like I said, they're yeast raised doughs. You want to make sure that you choose a dough that doesn't have too much sugar or too many eggs or too much butter in it, because that's going to cause the donut to get too brown. So I've got my dough that I made and it proved, so we're going to go ahead and form our donut. And please let me know if you have any questions. So you can roll these, or you can even press down the dough. This is a small amount of dough. If you're working with a large batch of dough, you're going to want to keep some of the pieces of dough in the refrigerator, because the dough will get old on the table, and that's going to affect the outcome when you're frying the donut. So you could lose a little bit of that yeast activity. So I'm just going to roll out this dough to about a 1/2 inch thick. That's typically the thickness that you're going to be making your donuts, about a 1/2 inch thick. You can do it a little bit less too, just depending on the size, and the shapes with these are really limitless. So we're just going to demonstrate a few shapes here today, and definitely let me know if you have any questions. Once we cut these, sheet pan, I've got some parchment on there too, and then they're going to be proofing like your yeast dough does. And that will be our yeast raised donut, the beginning of it, before we actually fry it. Okay, so I've got my dough kind of rolled out to about a 1/2 inch thick, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be cutting out the donut shape with just 2 cutters and 2 round cutters. They have donut cutters that have the round one in the center, and they're both attached, but you can easily use 2 of your round cutters that you have. And we're just cutting a round shape, and then we're just going to be cutting the center, and you can fry the centers too for your donut holes. So super easy to make. The bun dough, a lot of you have made it before for your Chelsea bun assignment. So that's how you're going to make your round donuts. So I kind of have a little bit of a sloppy cut there, so let's clean that up a little bit. It's a little sticky. It's been known to happen. Okay, so when you're cutting out your donuts, like anything, keep the cutter, keep them close to each other to limit your scrap with your cutter. Let's go ahead and cut another one. See how I'm cutting right next to it? I'm still keeping my round shape, but I don't have a lot of dough in between. So this dough can be reworked. What you can do is, press it together and then just leave it rest for a little while, maybe 15 minutes, and you can go ahead and use it again. Okay, so next we're going to be making the Long John shape, which is just a cutout. It's a rectangular cutout. out about 1.5 inches by 3 inches. So let's just go ahead and cut our piece of dough. So this is going to be our classic long john that we see oftentimes in bakeries and donut shops. And you can make, you know, miniatures, and, you know, your shapes and sizes are pretty much limitless. Okay, so we've got, you know, 2 classic shapes here. Okay, so for the next one, we're just going to be making a Bismarck. So we're just going to roll our dough into a ball. I'm just kind of tucking this and just going to kind of roll it a little bit. I kind of just like to tuck mine. And then what you're going to do is you're going to press it down. And they don't have to be perfect. No, donuts are. So let's go ahead and put these on our floured tray. And then we'll be able to make our cake donuts. And please let me know if you have any questions. So we're just going to gently flour our tray. And this is so these don't stick. Once they're proofing on this tray, they're going to become pretty, you know, delicate. So you want to be very careful when you pick them up. And this is where this flour comes in. It helps them not to stick. Okay, so we've got some nice shapes to get started with. So let's go ahead and look at our cake donut next. And like I said, please let me know if you have any questions. Let's just clean off our table a little bit here with our bench scraper. And then we'll go on to our cake donut. The cake donut, you know exactly what the name is. It has a cakey texture. And you're going to make your cake donut by using the creaming method. You're going to be creaming your fats together and adding your liquids and your flour. Okay, so this donut is a chocolate cake donut. I've got some cocoa powder in here for the chocolate flavor. It's got leaveners in here. The yeast donut is leavened with the yeast, of course, and this is chemically leavened with baking powder and baking soda. So there's a few types of cake donuts. Like I said, the flavors are limitless, but you have your cake donut that you can roll, and then you also have a cake donut, which is kind of a batter, but you're going to be needing a dispenser to drop that into the oil. So in large bakeries, they have automatic dispensers. In a smaller bakery, you might have one that you'll be using just by hand. Since a lot of us don't have dispensers, we're just making a classic cake donut as a cutout. So keep that in mind for the difference. Okay, so same thing, we're going to roll this to, you know, about a 1/2 inch thick. My cake donuts, I like to roll them just a little bit thinner, like 3/8 inch thick. And we're just going to be making some round shapes. So already we have, you know, 2 classic styles of donuts. This cake donut is super popular in the fall in a kind of like a spice flavor, like a cinnamon, or you can even find apple cider. So coming up soon, you're going to see those a lot and maybe making them a lot too. So same thing, you're just going to cut these out. And this dough, I've allowed it to relax for about 15 minutes. So if you find that your donuts are becoming kind of odd shape a little bit, leave the dough rest again for another 15 minutes before you actually cut it out, and that's going to help too. So I've got my dough cut out. And I'm just going to be making my inner circle, and then this is going to be going on that floured tray too. So these cake donuts, they just kind of need to relax for a little bit. They don't need to rise like the yeast donuts. So definitely try these out. It's a super easy recipe. And if you have a dispenser or you can get a dispenser, that's a great way to make the cake donuts as well. Okay, so our donuts are ready for frying. Let's go ahead and put these on our papered and floured sheet pan so they don't stick. They're going to relax for about 15 minutes, and the yeast-raised donuts will be proofing. And with the yeast-raised donuts, you're going to proof them with less humidity and less heat than you would your bread. Room proofing is absolutely ideal for yeast-raised donuts, and a lot of bakers will only proof them about 3/4 of the way because they're easier to handle. They're a little more dense, but it's a very popular technique. Okay, so let's go ahead and set these aside. And I've prepared some earlier, and our yeast-raised donuts they're getting nice and proofed, and we'll be frying those in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about the oil that we're going to be using. Okay, so you're going to want to use for your frying a low burn oil or low smoke oil, which means it's going to be able to go to a higher temperature without reaching the smoking point, which browns the oil and it starts to smoke, and it's really not good for frying. So we're just using a regular vegetable oil. You can reuse this oil. You're going to skim off any pieces through your frying, and you can store it at room temperature. And once the oil starts getting brown, it's getting used, it loses its smoke point, and it's going to start smoking at a lower temperature, and that means the oil is spent, so you're going to have to replace your oil. So keep your oil clean because it's going to ensure that your donuts don't have a bad flavor and they aren't too brown in color. Some bakers will use a shortening, a solid shortening, and melt it down. That's okay too, but the only thing with that is when you're eating the donut, it's not going to dissolve and melt in your mouth as easily, and that's where you're going to get a very greasy flavor. If you've ever had a donut that you taste like grease right away, where it's almost really heavy, it's probably been fried in a solid shortening. So let's go ahead and take a look at our oil. So for my donuts, I always warm my oil to 375 degrees. You can go in between 365 and 385, but I like to keep mine at about 375 degrees. I've got the oil warming up here. And always keep your thermometer in your oil when you're frying, and this way you'll know it's consistent. And what you're going to want to do is don't overload when you're making donuts. We're doing a small amount here, but if you're making a large amount, overloading the oil will bring the temperature down, and that's really going to affect your product. It can absorb more oil, and they can also fry a little bit inconsistent. So keep that in mind. Try to keep a smaller batch and not overload. And we have a question. Okay, we have a question. Can these types of donuts be baked as well? Well, the yeast-raised donut is always fried. You can try baking it, but typically it's fried. And the cake donut, there are some baked versions, but what you're going to want to do is you're going to use that lighter batter, the thinner batter that we talked about earlier that you need a dispenser for, and you're going to be putting that in an actual mold to be baked. So baking the cake donuts that have been rolled out, you can do that, but it's not going to be as good or as flavorful as frying them. You're going to have some dryness. So to make a baked cake donut, you're going to have to buy a special pan that molds the donut. But yes, they are delicious and they're super popular as well. And it's nice for people that don't want the fried fat in their diet. So I definitely recommend them. The chocolate ones are super popular and they're delicious. I've made them and had them myself. So let's get back to our oil. It's starting to get pretty warm here. Okay, so we have a little bit of a ways to go, and then we're going to be doing some frying. So for our frying, once our donuts come out of the oil, We're going to be putting them on something that's going to absorb the oil. Paper towels work perfectly. You can put them on a screen, but I like to put mine directly on the paper towels. I save my screen for my glazing. So just kind of tap off the oil a little bit and get them right onto the paper towel, and just leave them cool here until you're ready to finish them. Okay, so our oil is getting nice and warm. We're going to turn up our temperature a little bit. And we're going to want to get this to, about 375. And then that's perfect. Then we'll load it up with a few donuts that we made earlier. Okay, so let's take a look. Chef Susie better get her glasses on to make sure that she's at the right temperature. Okay, it's looking good. It's kind of climbing up a little slowly, but that's okay. So nextly, we're going to talk about our third donut, which is French donut. It's a classic donut. You'll see it oftentimes in donut shops as a curler. It's got big pockets in it because it's made with the choux paste that you make your eclairs, cream puffs, and swans with that you've made in the program. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to make your choux paste, and then you're going to pipe it out on a pan, and you're going to do some rings or even some little rosettes for small ones, and you're going to pipe those to about 2 inches or whatever size that you like them. Then you're going to freeze this, and it's going to be peeled off the paper and dropped directly in the oil. So we've got some that I made earlier that are in the freezer, and we're going to go ahead and get them, and we're going to we're going to fry those first. So you'll definitely like these. Okay, let's go ahead and check on our oil temperature. Okay, it's climbing up pretty good here. We've just got a little ways to go, and then we'll do some frying. Okay, great. So this is the choux paste that I made earlier, and I froze it. Maybe make it the night before and freeze it. Be careful if you're making a large amount. Keep it on small pans, half pans. You're probably not going to want to do a full sheet pan because you're going to actually need to be able to pick this up. So I'm just going to kind of loosen these while I'm getting my oil ready, and we'll go ahead and fry a few of these. So this is a really cool technique, and you'll be sure to dazzle your friends and family with this one. Okay, this is very classic French donut. Keep this one in mind, and this can be flavored as well. I always like to use a little bit of mocha in my choux paste. You can dissolve it with your water or with your milk, and it gives them a little bit of a different color, and it adds a really nice distinct flavor when it's cooked. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at our oil. It's almost there. It's so important that it reaches the right temperature, and we have another question. The question is, what type of thermometer am I using? This is actually my personal favorite thermometer. I've had it for a long time. I've taken it into many commercial kitchens with me. Just a digital probe thermometer, and it's by a company by the name of Polder. And I actually bought this at Bed Bath & Beyond a long time ago. I love it. I like the screen, the display. It's easy to read. Sometimes I have to put my glasses on, but that's a different story. And what's nice is it has a magnet on the bottom too. If you're working in a commercial kitchen and you have it on your stove, it's not going to go anywhere, and it disassembles easily to clean the probe. You can use any type of thermometer, any type of candy thermometer. Those work as well. So whatever best for you, but I like this digital model with the probe. Okay. So knowing that, we're going to check our temperature because it's getting up there, and we're going to go ahead and add one of these. Now be careful when you're adding your donuts, and if you're adding them by hand, you can drop them in with a spoon like this, or you can add them by hand. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to fry this one up. Just kind of doing a little test with our small one. I'm going to keep my probe in so I can watch the temperature of my oil to make sure that it's not getting too warm or too cold. And we have another question. Hmm? Okay, the question is will adding the frozen donut affect the temperature of the oil? If you add a lot of them, it definitely will. So you're going to want to limit that to just adding a few. So it's definitely going to be colder than your yeast raised donut. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to be frying these on each side. And so we've got some browning on each side. And please let me know if you have any questions. Okay, so it's getting nice and brown. Okay, so that's our French donut. Let's go ahead and fry up a little bit the larger one. Now be careful when you're adding these and don't splash. And like I said, you can add them with your spoon as well. Keeping an eye on my oil. Okay, so next we're going to be frying up some of the cake donuts and the yeast raised donuts that we made. So definitely be sure to try the French donuts. You'll be sure to dazzle your friends and family. Okay. So, while that one's going a little bit, let's go ahead and grab our donuts that I made earlier today. So the yeast raised donuts are coming up nicely. They're nice and puffy. And let's go ahead and get this little French donut out of here. Okay. And for a little more volume on this French donut, you can let it sit a little bit at room temperature, and when it's not so hard frozen, but you'll be sure to like these. Okay, so we've got our little French donut there. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our cake donut, or maybe we'll do our yeast raised donut first. So this is our Bismarck donut, so we're going to go ahead and drop it in. It's going to fry up, it's going to poof up nicely. We're keeping an eye on our oil temperature to make sure that it's not too warm. And like I said, you're going to cook this until it just browns nice and golden brown on each side, and then it'll be done and ready to go. Let's go ahead and add our ring donut and our Bismarck while that one's finishing off. Okay, and do we have any questions? Okay. Yes. Yes, the French donut is sometimes called the cronut. That is correct. Okay, so our Bismarck is looking good. It puffed up real nice. It's getting a nice golden brown color. Let's go ahead and pull it out so it doesn't get too dark. And then we have our ring yeast donut, which I'm kind of flipping over, and our Bismarck, our Long John. And they're almost ready to go. So definitely have fun exploring your donuts. Okay. We're going to let these get just a little more brown, and then we'll go ahead and we'll fry up our cake donuts, and then we'll finish these off. Okay. So I've got some pretty high donuts here that I cut out. You can, you can make them a little bit thinner if you like. I always like mine a little higher because they're just a little more distinct. Okay, so let's go ahead and fry up our chocolate cake donuts. The cake donuts are a little harder to keep an eye on because you're not going to be seeing, you're not going to be seeing that color. So you're going to be frying these for about maybe 1.5 to 2 minutes. So they're going to first go down and sink, and then they'll come back up. And once you're doing your donuts for a little while, you'll kind of get your timing down, and you'll kind of get used to them. And of course, the little ones are going to be taking just a little bit less time. Okay, let's go ahead and turn these chocolate cake donuts over. And we have another question. The question is will a different oil make the outer shell lighter? It can, and it really, a lot of it depends on your cooking temperature and what your dough is made of too. Like this enriched bun dough that we fried up, it most definitely has, the sugars and the eggs and the butter, which enable a lot of that browning. So let's go ahead and get our little cake donuts out of here. And we're just going to give these a little bit more, and then our donuts will be done. And we'll talk about finishing some of these too. Okay, so our chocolate donuts look great. And like I said, you'll get the timing down on these, and because you're not able to see the coloring like you do with the yeast raised donuts. Okay, so now that our donuts are finished, we're going to let them cool. And then we're going to be finishing them off with some icing and glazes. So let's take a look at a couple of things that we'll be doing. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be making is a glaze. It's just going to be a simple glaze. We're going to be doing it over the double boiler here. And clean up a little bit. Okay. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be softening a little bit of gelatin with some water. And once this is softened, we're going to be dissolving the gelatin over our double boiler. So we're softening this, it's about 3 grams of gelatin, and it's got about 8 ounces of water. Okay, so it's definitely softened, so we're going to be putting this over the double boiler. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of corn syrup and a little bit of vanilla for flavor, and we'll be pouring this mixture into some powdered sugar to make a nice glaze for our donuts. Okay, so since we have a pretty good amount of liquid, we've got our powdered sugar here. And as soon as this is dissolved, we'll be making our glaze. And please let me know if you have any questions on anything. Okay, so we're also going to be dipping our donuts in a little bit of fudge that I've warmed earlier. And we're also going to be dipping them in a little bit of powdered sugar. So your powdered sugar doesn't dissolve, I definitely recommend adding a little bit of cornstarch. So for every about pound of powdered sugar, you'll add about 2 to 3 teaspoons of cornstarch, and that's going to help it from dissolving. Okay. And the flavors and toppings that you can do with your donuts are really limitless, so definitely have a lot of fun with them. What's nice about this glaze that I'm making for you is it's got the gelatin in it, so it's going to help it stick to the donut a little bit. But you're going to want to make sure that your donuts are nice and cool before you do this. Okay, it's just about dissolved. Okay, looks good. Okay, it's nice and dissolved. We're going to be adding our vanilla and a little bit of corn syrup. And then we'll go ahead and we'll make our glaze. So the glaze, you can make it ahead of time. You can store it in the refrigerator and then just warm it up as you need it. Okay, I've got a little bit of vanilla. I'm using clear vanilla. You can also use any type of extract. The flavors are really limitless. And this glaze is just going to put a nice thin coat on these donuts. let's go ahead and add this to our powdered sugar. So like I said, we've got a good amount of powdered sugar, but we also have a good amount of liquid. What I like to do is make a little well in the center, and I add half of my liquid, and then I'm going to be adding the other half, giving the sugar just a chance to dissolve. So it's super easy glaze to make. Definitely keep this one handy for your donuts. So let's go ahead and add the rest of that liquid. If you find that your glaze is too thin, go ahead and add just a little bit more of the powdered sugar. And if it's too thick, go ahead and add just a little bit more water. But it's looking pretty good. And we're just going to get these well incorporated, and then we're going to be glazing a few of our donuts. So the French donuts are perfect glazed, and we'll also glaze one of our chocolate cake donuts. And pretty soon our donuts will be ready to be eaten. Okay, so you're going to want to mix this pretty good to get some of those lumps out, and they will dissolve on their own as well, being in the liquid. So no worries if you got some in here, they'll definitely go away. So this is a super nice glaze for the donuts. So what we're going to do is we're going to dip this in. We're going to dip the donut in the glaze, and then we're just going to be putting it on a rack so some of the glaze can drop off. Okay, so I've got a rack. Let's go ahead and grab a couple of our donuts. I always like to do this by hand. And if you're doing the chocolate donut, you might want to keep a separate bowl for your chocolate because you are going to get some chocolate crumbs in there. So let's go ahead and dip these little French donuts that we made. A little bit of glaze, and it's going to definitely pour off of there. What's nice about this glaze is things can stick to it. You can go ahead and roll this in some nuts or even some coconut or some chocolate shavings when you're done. So that's the beauty of the glaze. So it's going to look a little thick going on, but it's definitely, as you can see, it's running off really nicely. You can kind of do a couple touch-ups as you go. So super easy way to finish your donuts. Let's go ahead and finish a couple more of these. We're going to set these aside. Okay, and what we're going to do is let's go ahead and work on our Bismarck really quick. Okay, so our Bismarck is just a plain donut that was round that we fried. So we're going to be filling this, and what I like to do is I kind of like to start it out a little bit and do some hollowing. And then I have a Bismarck tip here, which is perfect for filling these. You can also use this for filling eclairs. It's pointy, so you can just kind of put it in without hollowing the donut or the eclair. And it's got a nice long stem, so you can kind of get in there and do some really good filling. So you're just going to be piping in your filling with your Bismarck tip. And you can fill it up really good. You can also fill these with jelly too. Okay, so once that's full, I like to roll this one in particular in some powdered sugar. And like I said, I've got a little bit of cornstarch in here too. So it's a nice finished donut. Super delicious. You will be sure to dazzle your friends and family. Let's go ahead and put that on the rack. Okay, so that's another way to finish your donuts. Now we're just going to do some really classic chocolate fudge finished donuts. Okay, so I've got some chocolate fudge that I warmed earlier. And we're just going to go ahead and dip our donuts in here. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of take these off of here. And as you can see, the 3 types of donuts that we made are really easy to make, and you'll have a lot of fun with them. So definitely try these. Okay, so we're just going to, dip this in some chocolate fudge for a nice chocolate coating. You can use your ganache in your assignments as well. That works out nice. And while the fudge is still warm, if you want to sprinkle anything on there, perhaps some sprinkles, you're going to want to do that at this time. So we've got some rainbow sprinkles, and we've also got some of these nice little blue nonpareil balls. So super easy to make, just, you know, it's a process. And here's the classic Long John finished. Okay, so these are our donuts. What we're going to do is our little cake donuts, we're going to dip a couple of those in chocolate too, and then these are ready to go on a plate and be served. So have lots of fun with your donuts. Let me know how you're doing. I'd love to hear if you have any questions. Lots of fun to make, and it gets a little messy in the kitchen, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and put these on a plate. You may have to use your spatula to get them on here, but definitely try these for your friends and family. They would love you for it. Okay, here we go. Some nice finished donuts. And we've got a little spot on here. The donuts still may be a little bit warm, so keep that in mind, that they're nice and cool before you finish them. We'll go ahead and put our Long John over here, and let's kind of pick up our chocolate finished donuts. And you're probably going to want to let these set before you serve them. But definitely try the donuts and let me know how you're doing. And thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.